and again from right at the beginning, involved right at the start, a greatest enthusiast, and so yeah, this is us. So welcome, Brian.
Oh, it's great to be here. And one of the things I love about both John and Thornton is that the Biofield viewer is a constantly evolving science and with increasing usefulness. And at the Monroe Institute, we've been using it for a number of times. I teach energy medicine there. And it's seeing is believing. It's really amazing for people to sit there and watch as the energies and their energy fields change. And we actually, we study human consciousness there. And when we started a project called the Copper Wall Project, it looked at some work that had been ongoing with Elmer Green at ICM and others. And I thought the biofield imaging would be an incredible application in this arena. And we were already measuring some of doing physiologic measurements and EEG monitoring and such. And so I went to both of them and asked, you're aim the stars, you reach the sky. I asked for suggested a number of areas that would be really helpful for doing this consciousness work. And what I was hoping was we could get 10% of what we asked for. Instead, we got 110%. Every single thing we asked for, they were able to accommodate. And it was huge. And as a result, that was incorporated in everybody's biofield imaging and updated. So we all get the benefit of it, not just, the Institute. And they continue to evolve and share and make improvements. And being able to use a cell phone is just a whole new option that really opens opportunities for all of us, because we all carry them with us all the time. So this is a really exciting time.
Thanks, Brian. I guess Thornton's tidying his hard drive. Oh, hi, Thornton. You're on mute. You're on mute. Your audio's off.
Sorry.
Your audio's off, Thornton.
I apologize. It's all recording now, I'm glad to say. And we do have a merry band with us. And I'm sorry this isn't more of a discussion with everybody, that we could get to know you. So just bless you for being here and joining Brian and John and I in this relatively informal discussion. But Brian, of course, has hit on some real cherries. Biofield science has been effectively taboo for about 100 years. And if you've heard me speak, you've certainly heard me say that sort of thing before. And so it's really significant when medical professionals kind of leap over the Grand Canyon. There's not too many people who can swing both ways in this medical science arena. And Brian just swings like the best of them. And I think encourages a lot of other professionals who understand what's going on and the limitations of the scientific paradigm to join the process. I find it interesting when you study the community of functional medicine practitioners. Many of them have crossed over this bridge by having a personal situation, a family member or a wife, husband, personal crisis that wasn't being met by their colleagues and their own medical understanding. And so they jumped into maybe homeopathy or something and had an amazing experience. And it happens almost every time. You can see how the experience of healing manages to transcend the programming of an education, which is often set to a certain playing field. And John and Brian and I have had to work in an environment where the world's view is looking the other way. And so, for example, we don't have institutionalized research into biofield science. We just have a lot of incredible pioneers like Brian, like Shamini Jain, like Eileen McCusick, who just sort of jump in there and create their own reality for something that clearly is, and more of us are beginning to understand it, the missing link in healthcare at the moment. Because all healing modalities, when viewed from a biofield perspective, reveal their jewels in the biofield. So they're clearly working in the biofield. And often before we see any physical response. I've worked with medical thermal imaging for many years, and I'm well well aware of the kind of non-invasive screening racket that's going on to protect radiologists and their profession, because thermal imaging will reveal a breast cancer 6 years before a mammogram. And mammography has the side effects of causing breast cancer. And it's a 5% chance every time we get a mammogram, and it's accumulative. So by the time you're 50, it's a coin toss whether you're going to get cancer from the current paradigm of screening. We can't live like this. And that's why it's important for us to have these type of conversations. Before I hand the mic back to Brian and John, I did just want to say something else. This whole process is, this whole series of events we're having is in accompaniment with our online system. All of our practitioners have access to the online system, and they've been beta testing it. But soon everyone else will as well, for a monthly fee. And obviously you can cancel and come back whenever you like. But the point is that it gives us an opportunity to do things globally that we haven't been able to do before. And it seems sensible for that global activity to start with some really thorough research. And so today we're launching the online version of the Human Biofield project, which we're currently planning various different avenues. But as I'm a member of the board of the Emerging Science Foundation, we're currently working out how we can have a little portal there so that anyone who wants to conduct research can access this window, if you like, to biofield imaging. And it's very versatile because obviously you can do it on a phone or in any circumstance where you might find yourself and want to take an image. So this is exciting times. Brian, last time we chatted, you mentioned you wanted to show a few slides. Do you have some images you can pull up?
I can. You just give me a minute, hum a few bars, and I'll get it up here.
My pleasure. Well, I mean, certainly this is, I mean, John alluded to a lot more than 75 years, I think. And it's what, it's 2021 now, crikey, 1990. When did you first develop the biofield imaging on that BBC computer, John? What year was that?
Yes, it was probably 1991, and we were thinking about it from before then, a year or two before then.
Right.
Yes.
So when did you do your...
thinking about it? We're all...
So that's really 90 years. I think I was being a bit coy when I said 75 years.
We're indeed, indeed. This must be just about exactly 30 years, I would think. Yes.
And of course
amazing.
that
I realized. Yes.
And so when people come across biofield imaging today, they don't realize that we've got this 30-year track record, and that as you and I, both being in our early 50s, have been looking through the biofield lens longer than half of our lives. And people think that
yes, there wasn't even the internet.
yeah, people think that
there wasn't even the internet.
People think that we're psychic, John, because of the accuracy of our interpretation. But, you know, some of our students are here who've literally just got the system. And it really isn't that. It's not that at all. We can see certain patterns and colors and symmetries in the biofields, which we've learned what that means. And we can teach it to you very quickly. And you can cross-reference and check in all the other ways you would like to do that to identify the accuracies. But the real breakthrough for us as a research team was actually kind of putting our heads above our own research lab's parapet and realizing that there's a huge wealth of corroboration in a lot of other communities. And these communities I speak of, for example, would be those different healing modalities who create brilliant training manuals for their practitioners and have all these extraordinary maps of human emotions and such like, which they've gleaned through intuition, trial and error, dowsing, you know, hundreds, thousands of different techniques, but they all corroborate, these maps corroborate. And I found that fascinating when I first came across the chakras, you know, that there's thousands of different sects in India, all singing to different spiritual traditions, but they all recognize this sort of major chakra system. And I think that's true across the board. You know, in the Christian parable system that we have, the chakras and their functionality are discussed as the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues. It's a very veiled discussion, but incredibly accurate to the functionality of the chakras. And so with a little bit of homework, you can travel across the cultures and across the globe and find this uniformity that we need as scientists. I mean, we're floating on a sea of chaos. We need this island to at least be solid enough as the life of Pi Island was. So Brian, have you got your slides up?
Yes, do you have screen share on?
Yeah, I'm going to do that, my friend. I'm going to do that. You're up. I know how to do that. I don't know how to share recording.
And just let me know if you can see this.
Yep, we can see your lovely face at the moment.
And let me...
I think you have to go to the bottom of the Zoom page and there's a green square with an arrow pointing upwards. I think. That's what I can see, Brian.
Yes.
If you don't see that, then maybe it's somewhere else on the screen. And if you can't, if you can't find it, then we're allowed to be. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Okay.
Alex, great.
I picked a short. I could show you thousands like Thornton, but this, and it should have John Catchpole. The 3 of us have been collaborating everywhere. Actually, I remember we were in Malaysia someplace when I picked up 2 more biofield viewing systems. Okay, so this is a, I didn't show you the earlier one, 8.5 months earlier. It shows she's a woman who exercises regularly, very healthy, and you see a very clear chakra and such. And this is 8.5 months later, and she's now 8 months pregnant. So you don't see the before one to compare, but here's her 3rd chakra, which was very clear with gold and white, and now you see red. And the reason is, if you look, and I labeled things, so it's a little distracting, but here's her 8-month-old baby that's on the way. Notice the incredible energy. And notice the head, you can actually make out an ear, foot, leg. Here's the placenta around. I'm sure actually my arrow's probably not showing up for you folks, but
no, it
so
is,
you can,
it is, Brian. Your arrow is showing up.
Okay. So what's interesting, earlier, in early pregnancy, you'll just see usually gold and kind of white in the second and third chakra areas, primarily second then, and you won't recognize a fetus. This is very late term pregnancy, but this is a 15-year-old who's psychotic, and voices are telling her to kill people. And if you look, here's this huge wide open brow, which normally you'd think that's a great thing. Well, normally that might be a good thing, except that hers is so open. And look at her crown chakra, which is split in half. You see all this energy coming in, and the voices are literally coming in and telling her to do awful things to other people. And you can look and see, if you look at her eyes, this very negative red energy congestion. Now, I was actually in Harry's clinic in London. Thornton, Harry, I, and John have been collaborating for years. Harry unfortunately passed last October, but I was in his clinic, and the night before I started developing a very severe sore throat and fever. It actually spiked to the next morning to 103. We had to cancel all the patients we were seeing. And if you look, you see this huge energy, red energy congestion. And this is a Herkimer diamond crystal wand. And in America, I can write scripts for antibiotics. I'm in London, so I can't there, and I'm really frustrated. I just pick up this wand and point it at my throat, and if you notice, right where it's pointing, it turns blue. It shifted from red to blue, and those of us familiar with the throat chakra know that's the color of the throat chakra. So the next is a video, real time, 1 minute, 10 seconds. Notice the energy passing through the throat and in the back. Wherever it's pointed, it shifts from red to green or blue. And the whole video, I'll speed this up, is 1 minute, 10 seconds long. And it goes from this to this, literally decongests. Look at the bright energy around the head. I'll let, Thornton can go into intimate detail. I'm just going to do a quickie here. But in 30 minutes, my temperature was back to normal. I felt totally fine. My sore throat resolved, and really an amazing way. At the Monroe Institute, we do a program on energy healing and such. And this is, you can see how each of the fingertips act as chakras, as well as with the intention to send it with the whole hand, that the whole hand emits energy. And it's really lovely to be able to see it, because when we do this, a lot of people can sort of sense they're doing that, but when they see this, suddenly, oh my gosh, and you'll see it ramp up incredibly quickly. We do in 5 or 6 days what some people do in years of training. It's really amazing how it accelerates. And look at the energy in the area. This gets into areas, it's actually something I'm very interested in. You can pick up sometimes non-physical energies. The Gettysburg Battlefield in the US in Pennsylvania, 50,000 men, soldiers died in 3 days. And this was actually one of the battle sites around Little Round Top. And one of the local historians there thought it depicted a Union soldier. You can see the hat here, their arm, his interpretation, they were loading a bullet into a rifle, but we've got lots of images. Actually, and the videos are interesting. You'll see soldiers walking in the battlefield with weapons and such. This is at the Monroe Institute in Virginia, where we do a lot of mind consciousness research. And we have a lot of research areas. This is a particular room that has copper shielding to screen out outside electromagnetic radiations, 32 channel brainwave monitoring. That's myself. That's Captain Skip Atwater, who is the Director of Operations and Training for the Stargate Remote Viewing Program. He's incredibly psychic and gifted, and he ran the research lab for about 20 years. And so we use, at this time, special kinds of sound that are binaural beats and such. We have a lot more advanced techniques now, but can induce extraordinary brainwave states. And I actually tried to get in touch with my brother Colin, who died about 8 months earlier. And this is hard for you to make out, nose, forehead, hair. I knew it was because we were actually in nonverbal communication. And that's a picture of him taken shortly before he passed. And so at this time, and at that time, I don't know of a more amazing way to image some of these possibilities. You know, we have no way. We just have the person's word about that. So I go to all these energy places. My family grew up in Arizona, so I love imaging all the Sedona vortexes as well as other areas. I mean, Thornton and John have been tons of places that have great imaging. This is Bell Rock here. It looks like an upside down bell. And we're sitting on another vortex. It's Cathedral, by Cathedral Rock, and it's Chapel of the Holy Cross. It's another vortex with this in the background. I don't know if you and John would like to comment, Thornton, but this is really high energy in this area. Look at this gold. And this is, she's going to sit there, inhale, exhale, and send energy to this entire area in the valley. How long do you think it takes to elevate the energy this high?
Good one.
About this long.
Wow.
Just amazing. And you can feel it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Brian.
So,
it's funny, Brian, because of course what's happening here, and something that we discuss a lot, is that there's a biofeedback process that's occurring. When someone witnesses their own biofield, that loop can trigger a cascade to transformation. That's what we're witnessing. And so,
sure.
as you've mentioned in your acceleration of transfer of knowledge in your advanced energy medicine squared training course, you know, where just in a matter of days, people are achieving things they didn't know they were perhaps capable of regularly. In the same way, you know, this process of people.
Well, what I find, when you look at, she's wearing a black t-shirt. That's awful for biofield imaging. We usually, you know, naked is best, you know, bare skin, but we'll wear thin white t-shirts, which will give a fairly good representation. But you see all this gold energy bleeding right through. That's really a high energy. And there we go. I put in a short version. I've got hundreds of these. We can show it another time, but
that's brilliant.
I'm always amazed and just thrilled that we have this.
Yeah.
Because it takes, you know, the extraordinary and sublime, and takes it to a whole new height. And it's really amazing to see how different healers emit energy and utilize it. And you can also see it interacting between the two people, which is, again, where else are you able to do that?
Brilliant. Thank you.
So,
well, we're certainly going to have more time to discuss these things, but I did just want to add some flavor to the slides that you've shown us, and in perhaps some kind of order. The image of that young lady in the in Harry's lab, I remember her well, and it's interesting when you go to places where the cultural matrix is perhaps more alive to other elementals or other elementals, you know, it does become very interesting. And I think it opens a very interesting, important discussion about psychiatry as it currently stands. Now, in Colorado, where I am, there's quite a few scientists here who are interested in, you know, the paranormal aspect. There is a device, Brian, which I'm going to just quickly show you some images of, because I think it does need to be seen and shared. So I'm going to do that right now, and it might trigger some discussion. And correct me, anyone, if I'm speaking out of turn, but this image, if you can see it, is taken, it's actually a normal image taken with a Polaroid camera. And I think for a while, the Polaroid film was an important part of this process. I don't fully understand why, although when I was very, very young, I was taken to Germany, to the Harz Mountains, to film some etheric beings. These were Zoroastrian Dasturs from previous millennia, guarding a sacred etheric fire. And they were using a Mark II Polaroid camera. Had to be a Mark II Polaroid camera. And obviously some process in the development of that film allows for a slightly wider spectrum of visibility to be visualized. So I do, you know, I get it, I understand it, I see it. And so in this image, what's happening is the Bio Illuminator is being switched on, and then another Polaroid image is being taken. But if you can see closely this image, there isn't just the original lady's face. There's also a number of other characters here, at least, I don't know, about 4 or 5 other people. And so what is the Bio Illuminator, and what are we seeing here? The Bio Illuminator is a torsion generator, and it looks a little bit like a jet engine in a black painted box about the size of a locker for a school student in an American school, that kind of long, thin metal box. What it does is it tinkers with the electromagnetic fields and torsion fields in the space in which it's standing. And so I've used this camera a number of times. I did a study with Gaia on water, and the fellow who had this system brought it along. And it was interesting, most of us, whether the Bio Illuminator was on or not, had the same image taken. It was only in certain circumstances when people, and as I understand it, this lady had had a heart transplant. And so, you know, we can now question modern medicine and its understanding of subtle energies and elementals and entities when it charges into this huge part of modern medicine, the transplant industry. And you know, if we realized what we're getting, perhaps we didn't quite bargain for when we have a transplant, it clearly is important for other people involved, perhaps with shamanic skills. And in this particular case, what we're seeing is that the transplant has cleaved open an individual so that other entities, discarnate entities, can jump in. And this speaks to the ignorance of modern medicine. So yeah, I mean, a bit of an aside, Brian, I certainly didn't expect to speak to that today, but and it is interesting, of course,
Sure.
that the red eyes that you well, we all got, you know, come on, buddy, that's 28 years ago that picture was taken. That young lady is a grown woman now somewhere, but yet we see pictures around the world, and the red eyes is often an indication of this type of activity. And there are other signs here. You notice there's rather a strange kind of loopiness to the ears, and this is a family in Bali who had some kind of magical stuff going on that disturbed them, let's say. And I was just, I think, the third or fourth person that had said, you know, perhaps this is more a type of a possession type of a thing than anything else. So anyhow, John, you know, you've been working, dare I say, burning the candle at both ends a little bit, creating all these new features and systems. And Brian was quick to sing your praises, how, you know, we're getting now, after a few years, to Biofield 5 live. And it's been a hard slog. But there is some sense that your genius, and of course I can say this, and experience developing the Apple 3D graphic stuff did mean you were perhaps the right person to tackle such a quandary, not just from the software perspective, but also from the responsibility perspective. Because as I often say, you know, we feel like guardians of something that is sacred. We don't feel like businessmen sitting here flogging gear. You know, for us, it's much more about, you know, are we forwarding the science in a way that we should be, or are capable of doing, in the light of this tabooness, if that's a word. But as I said, you know, it's discussions like this with our new friends, who can meet people like Brian out of his busy schedule, and to be honest, even had to cancel some surgery to attend this call, or postpone it, I should say. So, you know, thanks, Brian, really, for being here. But John, you have got some exciting new features. Can you tell us a little bit about the chat, and a little bit about how easy it's going to be from an iPhone to access the technology?
Yes. Yes, we realised the most important thing about a year ago. We realised that the most important thing needed for Biofield Viewer is to have it working on all devices, and also before the virus occurred, we realised that we need to help people internationally reach people that they aren't necessarily with physically. This is, after all, you know, we're dealing with energies that aren't physically visible in the normal sense. So we're all about things, being able to make connections, and we have a new web service which is in testing at the moment, which is working fine. It's not had any problems at all. So we're just scaling up now, and we'll have it as a complementary system to our main Biofield Viewer. It'll never replace it. There's things that the desktop software, notebook software, will always do better, like high performance graphics, 3D, real time, you know, and the things that we need in our hand on a phone, wherever we are. And even if we're not at our usual device. It could be a tablet, it could be anything, it could be a TV media player or anything like that. So we've got the ability to work with helping people who aren't with us, so they can run it on their device without installing software. So it's a convenience thing, and of course once you enable something, then new things come from that, and we discover new possibilities we weren't aware of before when we have a new tool, because we combine it with other things, and suddenly new things are possible. So what Thornton's particularly keen about, that I've shown him, is the chat system, which is basically an information system, which is technically more convenient than Facebook and the other channels that we've used, and email and things like that. It's much more organized, much more all about energy healing. That's the most important thing. And so taking your energy is not what we should be doing. It should be something that's very, very easy, and doesn't make you tired to use it. And it's not bright colors with high contrast things flashing all over the place. So it's a joy to use. I've been selfishly using it myself for the last couple of months, and it's made my life considerably easier. Even outside of Biofield Viewer, I actually use it for general organizing my life. Actually, it's just so convenient. So this is coming your way, to people who have Biofield Viewer initially, and we'll find a way to reach that all of us can reach as many people as possible with it afterwards. So it's that's what's coming.
Wow, John. Thank you. So I'm just going to show a couple of more images to our colleagues who may not understand really the implications fully of what we're talking about. And again, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And so I just want to show a couple more images from my my slideshows from last week. And so what effectively you'll be looking at on your phone, this is me, is an image like this. And so the question is, do you have to then call me or one of our 1,800 other practitioners around the world for an interpretation? Or do you want to dip into the global knowledge bank, remembering that we've been face reading for 5,000 years, and cross-reference the, as I said, corroborated knowledge of face reading with the Biofield image? So for example, in this case, I can see patterns that look very much like an energetic counterpart of congestion with the colon. So does this girl then go on a course of enzymes or probiotics, and then over a period of weeks see this area brightening up? So this triggers and allows, I think, for the individual to claim their own health choices and to monitor them in a certain way. Now, you know, once you transform the clinical environment over to the individual, you've also got to encourage them to kind of standardize and optimize the process, so we don't have to reject images because of shadow or such like. Now, fortunately, around the same time as we're having this discussion, the entire passport photograph industry is morphing from these little cubicles and underground photographers. I don't mean underground, I mean just like down the steps, pardon me, to take our images. Whereas now most of the countries that I'm familiar with have this kind of app where I think my dad took my photo for my most recent passport, and all you've got to do, as is guided by this slide, for passport imagery is make sure your hair is kind of away from your face. You're not wearing anything that's going to obstruct your face, and you've got a nice white background. You'll also notice in the bottom right-hand image of this slide, that fellow's picture has been rejected because of shadow. The light has come in from the side, and you can't really see his face. And that is exactly the same scenario we have with the biofield imaging. And if you go into the whole Alice in Google, you know, tunnel, there is so much guidance, and here is someone taking a passport photo using a kind of homemade reflector, and of course we love that kind of thing because it uniforms the lighting. We don't have any shadow under the chin anymore, so we can see the throat chakra very clearly. What people perhaps don't realize, of course, is that the body is a diamond and we can read every facet. So, you know, sometimes it's just not appropriate to fully undress, as Dr. Brian was speaking to earlier. We may be in a more public environment, or we're taking images of the whole family. And so we can just take images of the face, the feet, and the hands, and we can cross-reference with all the reflexology charts and such like. So it is a fairly clean process. I'm hoping we don't have lots of reject images. This image would be a reject because the light is all coming in from the window on this side of my face. So if I wanted to send an image in for Biofield viewer, I would try and illuminate my face with something that provided that uniformity. And in our clinics, we all have little, you know, what are they called? The doings that put your hair back so that anyone with long hair can create a little ballet dancer bun. But of course, we just can share that insight, and then of course we can see the most amount of information. And so what I could do right now, we're already capable of doing, any one of the practitioners, and I know there's quite a few of you on this call, this background is no good. Someone could hold up a white card behind me if we're doing a family thing, or I'll just head off to somewhere with a white wall and do the same thing. But I could effectively, and John, of course, is sitting by the white wall, I could just picture grab us, all of you individually on this Zoom call or on a Skype call or whatever it is, and run it through the Biofield viewer and then post it up. So this process can happen. Now, I was stunned. I was doing some research in America with some practitioners, and I was stunned to find so many of them working at a distance. And I asked one guy, you know, how many of your clients do you actually see at a distance? And he said, oh, about 70%. And he also said he thought that would be about the average. So, you know, having a distance screening tool to accompany a distant healing process allows for us to observe the process, track the progress, and you know, if something's not happening in the way that we think it should be, we can fine-tune those recommendations from week to week, and never see our client. You know, it's one thing to go and have a healing session, but if that's an hour away, we've got to drive and park both ends, it kind of can rob from the experience. I mean, if I can go and sit in a quiet room in my house or find a nice chair somewhere and initiate a healing session, so I get the whole hour and not, you know, 3 hours of travel and healing and travel, you know, it fits with our schedules, especially now. So again, you know, we feel that this is the right time for people to have a look at Biofield Viewer, either to take on the whole system and join the family and become a kind of a development center for any other number of people, you know, there's a number of different nationalities here on this call. Last time I spoke to one of our students, Michele, I said to him, you know, I hope you do something like this for the Italian community. You know, this is something that can easily fractalize and bifurcate with different practitioners into providing a service, you know, that's much more local and relevant to different remedies and so forth. So yeah, it's exciting times, and as I said, this is all spoken in the spirit of guardianship. You know, John and I actually reject people who want to buy our Biofield viewer system because they want to do crazy stuff with it, and it just doesn't make sense to us. And yet at the same time, we're really open to investigators who just want to travel into the unknown and see what they can see. And Brian alluded to earlier that the Biofield viewer can be used in sort of environmental assessment. And, you know, my research lab was in India for 20 years, and I would say probably 25% of my students were Vastu consultants. And I'm sure if I was in an Oriental environment, they would have been feng shui practitioners. But in the West, we speak about something called building biology, or Bogue biology. And it's that science of, you know, understanding electromagnetic pollution and all the other types of stressors that, you know, we have maybe hidden in plain sight in our family homes. You know, to that end, I think the best Christmas present you can give to someone is a little analog timer. I think I've got several in the cupboard back there. And what that allows you to do is plug this little box into your wall in front of your Wi-Fi router, and at the allotted hours, the family decides when this switch is going to switch itself off and when it's going to switch itself back on again. And of course, you can override it if you've got a late night set of accounts to do or a movie to watch. But essentially, this thing's going to always remember to switch itself off when the family's sleeping. And, you know, that's very interesting that we have, you know, modern smart families are being conscious about things like this. If you haven't heard of Stetzer, you know, that's a $30 little box you can plug into the wall, which addresses what we call dirty power, the actual frequencies and harmonics in the electrical system in the house can be disruptive, especially to people who are electrosensitive. And the Stetzer provides a solution for that. And so scientists and, as I said, Vastu, Bogue biology, feng shui practitioners are very interested to use the Biofield viewer to actually image these disturbed or disharmonious energies. And it is interesting because, you know, as I've spoken to before, one of the issues we have as artifact is shadow. And so when you're just kind of filming around a space, you know, with a camera, you know, you can have issues. Now, we like full spectrum lighting with Biofield imaging. And of course, the sun is the best example of that. So Brian out in Sedona using the sun as his light source, well, that's amazing because, you know, he can observe changes in real time. And certainly we've had a real boost to effective Biofield imaging of space with the new type of lighting that's available, because in the old days, the light had to be plugged into the wall. And now you can get, you know, even those wedding photographers has them as they walk around the room, a kind of decent sized light on the top of their camera, which has got its own little battery pack in it. And all the lights that our practitioners are getting now are that versatile, that they can plug in the wall in a clinic if you're going to people people in all day, but if they're out and about or they want to do really sort of professional images, especially for studying the progress of a treatment, you have to have that uniformity. If I'm just on my iPhone, I want to take a picture because I've got toothache, I don't really need to be concerned about the background because I'm going to be really close up to my face. And so this versatility does speak to the possibility for increasing our access. And I'm sure in due course, I mean, there's a great issue, and John and I discuss it very often, about artificial intelligence. And John and I have the same philosophy, and it is John's philosophy, to be honest, which is that we trust augmented intelligence, where the human consciousness and its channel to divinity is sitting in the deciding role, if you like. And so we're not having any kind of software, any kind of relationship with AI, with our software, that kind of preempts that process. And to give you another look on that, when I train practitioners, and we've trained thousands, you often have different skill sets in the training room. So I may have someone who's an Oriental medicine practitioner who is very familiar with the meridians. They may have never seen them before, but they're very familiar with them. In the same way, that next desk, there may be someone who is a lymphatic drainage practitioner, and they're very familiar with the anatomy and physiology of the lymphatic system. So when they see an image of an individual up on the screen, they both notice different things. The lymphatic drainage practitioner notices the lymph nodes and the pooling and congestions and color changes and lack of symmetries in those lymph nodes. And the Oriental medicine practitioner notices the meridians and may notice one particular meridian that stands out because of something that's affecting it. And so it's very important that I don't train anyone what they're seeing. You know, this is like a mirror to the skill set of the practitioner. So, and yet listening to Brian early, interpreting those images, I probably would have said exactly the same thing. So I did find that quite interesting also, because we don't tell our practitioners what to say. We train them what we're seeing and what we know, which is actually slightly different. And yet it does seem that we do seem to be singing from the same song sheet. Just to give you an idea about our global footprint, I think we've got as many Biofield viewers and other iterations as there are kind of PET scans and, you know, high-end new dimension MRI scans. So we really do have a global footprint. And obviously allowing people to access from anywhere online means that you don't even need to have electricity as such to access Biofield imaging. So we can now reach anyone in the world, and that really was our intention. And so, you know, we encourage, you know, viewers and colleagues who are actually live with us now to dive in. I can see my colleague Glenn is here. So many others, actually. I really appreciate it. Laura, Natalie, we've been doing some work with you and your dear hound. Joanna, I think Natalie and you two should meet up, because I don't think you're too far away. But you know, that does speak to our footprint. And moving forward, of course, it's exciting that you know, we do have such a beautiful family. We talk about the Biofield family, and you know, one day I look forward to inviting everybody to Biofield conferences that are uniquely Biofield and in person. For anyone that is interested, I'm the founder of the Energy Medicine Exchange, and if you go to the website energymedicineexchange.com, as it sounds, it's spelt, of thousands of hours, crikey, hundreds of hours of free workshops in the arena of energy medicine. I don't know whether I'm now lost. I certainly seem to be quite frozen. Did my camera freeze? But anyhow, please do. Yeah, please go to the Energy Medicine Exchange, because there's at least 4 or 5 biofield themed conferences there. And otherwise, I'd be happy to share other links. Brian is doing this exciting course at the Monroe Institute, Energy Medicine Squared. How do we sign up for that, Brian?
It's if you go to www.monroeinstitute.org, it'll be on the site.
Great. It's already there, or it will be?
We do a lot of different. Oh, it's already on there.
Okay.
We use crystals. That's another fave of mine with biofield imaging is crystals. We have a 23-ton crystal and a 16-ton quartz crystal. I don't know if they still are, but 15 years ago, they were the first and second biggest quartz crystals in the world at that time. Someone may have mined bigger ones since, I don't know, but there's a lot of energy. But we use all kinds of different, and you can sound to enhance, and it's interesting because you can image. What we're going to be doing with this, hopefully this very next in-person course, because we've been doing it virtually for a bit, is we always do biofield imaging before the course starts and at the end, and the differences are dramatic, as well as during the course.
Well, it certainly is an exciting time for our science, Brian. I note there's a conference coming up with a few speakers. I don't know whether you're aware of it. It's called, I think, the Science of Healing or something, that's coming up in the next few days. You know, it speaks to this sort of global community that we have. A lot of us are in silos. You know, I get about a lot, or certainly have done, and meet a lot of these other characters. And I think there's a kind of divine protection matrix going on in certain cases. And there's always been that sort of backup spare, hasn't there, for every inventor in case they get knocked down by a bus. You know, if something's going to come out, there'll be a Tesla or an Alexander Bell or someone in the wings to give their version. I think that's good and healthy. I certainly am encouraging a more collaborative community. And in our lab for the last few years, we showed that by testing the biofield imaging system alongside the BioWell, which is a Keelian type device, alongside the thermal imaging and various other technologies, so that you know, we really felt that there was a decent corroboration. There are some Mickey Mouse technologies out there, sort of aura cameras, and of course they don't have the fundamental quality of repeatability. You know, if I take an image right now, I need to take the next image a minute later. It needs to be pretty much the same. It can't be, you know, a whole spray of different colors, and the excuse is that, you know, you're thinking about something different. So, you know, that really doesn't wash in the lab. You know, I think it's important for practitioners to know that, you know, we're fundamentally scientists. We all qualified as therapists 30 odd years ago, but we're fundamentally scientists who've been using this technology under the anvil of research long before we unleashed it on an unsuspecting public. And therefore the buck really does stop here. you know, with people like Brian and John and I, because we can answer any question either with an honest "I don't know," or we can say, yeah, we've seen that before, or such like. And I think that's important, that, you know, we would finally claim responsibility. And I often see images which are heavily compromised by artifacts such as shadow, and people misinterpreting things. And I can very easily show how and why that's been done. And I think that is an important part of the learning process, because, you know, once you've got the image taken right, something will show up like a clown's red nose, and we can track it through its you know, process, either into disease or back to wellness. So this system is now not only non-invasive and real-time and full body, but it's also available in your own home, and that is a transformation. So, you know, again, it's ironic to us that the scale and process that we're working at, because of this world view, to looking towards biochemistry for answers, when clearly we can have a much more gentle approach. And I was in a discussion recently trying to explain why we have these two differing world views, and I think it does filter down to this, that our reality is blinking between the wave and particle state. And we know this when we look at the wave particle experiments. And what I mean to say is that I think that modern medicine, as represented by pharmaceuticals and biochemistry, addresses us when we're in particle state. And all the families of healing and energy medicine and traditional medicine recognize this blinking into wave state. And when we address healing in wave state, there doesn't seem to be the side effects or implications when we have to open up the body, undergo surgery, and so forth. So I think it is a new era. It's something that's always been there, as I said, hidden in plain sight, this opportunity to be much more gentle. But we are all beginning to realize the science, although complex in earlier decades, has become you know, more digestible and better integrated. So with this in mind, I'm going to call our little gathering to an end. I'm going to bless John and Brian and all the rest of you for attending. Especially pleased that so many of our current students are here, and a few on a refresher. But don't forget how accessible we are. John and I almost tag team different parts of the planet, a 24-hour coverage if there's an emergency or such like. And he's so accessible and approachable with matters that relate to the Biofield viewer, especially the workings of the software. Brian, it seems, is stepping up with his great experience to make it more available through the Monroe Institute, and I hope through other channels. And I too am available online through this platform, Facebook or any other. But Brian, speak for a second, because I'd like everyone to see you front and center.
Sure. Well, this is just such an exciting time. 15 years ago, you saw that picture of the psychotic girl with a big, wide open. I actually submitted a study. Unfortunately, it was a little too late for them at the time. We have a psychiatric emergency department within our big emergency department. And what I proposed was just doing a simple headshot when they bring the psych patients in for a quick scan. Because if you see, are they psychotic because they're naturally psychotic, or is it drug induced? Could we see a difference? I mean, it'd be a great quick screening diagnostic tool potentially. And the other is when you look at, for instance, transplant patients, initially there weren't large numbers. Now you've got heart transplants, liver transplants, and interestingly, now that we've done more studying, you have someone who had a heart transplant and suddenly their taste in foods changed. The person whose heart they received, liked certain kinds of food, and now he does, and certain kinds of food he used to like, he doesn't, which the heart person he got it from didn't like either. We're seeing, it would be great to biofield image them to see, particularly before and after, to see there's just so many exciting possibilities.
Well, Brian, it's funny you say that. I was invited in Singapore to film many hundreds of inmates in a psychiatric hospital, and there was definitely some commonalities which were quite unusual, and it does seem to be that with this technology we can now not only do all kinds of interesting studies like you're thinking of, but I must remind everybody that we can process images that have already been taken. So for example, the type of photo fit images of criminals, maybe, they're accessible in America or Europe, I don't know. You could run 1,000 images through the Biofield viewer without all the implications of arranging 1,000 people to be imaged, and you quickly see these patterns emerging, because in each of their police reports they're either just petty criminals who've done XYZ, whatever it is, or it may mention that they have had some kind of psychotic episode, and so you may immediately notice the difference. And as I said, that may be as simple as as a Google search to access this kind of database of images. I think it is important to honor people's choice and so forth. So, the technology we're speaking to is kind of operated by people at will. But I think in this type of example we're speaking to, in terms of research, I think it has merit. Certainly all the studies I've ever done have had ethics committee approval. So if something came up that may be a shortcut and not very sensible, then they would iron out that wrinkle. And certainly before a live Zoom announcement. But the point is that we can do all kinds of different stuff. John, thanks so much for joining us. Brian, thank you. Peter, I can see you as well, sir, up in Canada. Good luck. Hi, Laura. Hi, everybody. God bless you all. And thank you very much. And I just hope the recording recorded so that we can share it. But otherwise, I've got a funny feeling we're going to be doing this sort of thing again quite soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
All for it.
See you, Brian. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.